Books. I love reading, particularly fantasy. If you're like me, then you may have noticed an abundance of new titles, but a lack of good ones. Every time I go into a bookstore, I'm seeing these books with colored pages and crazy cover art, but then I read the synopsis or the first few pages and I'm putting it back on the shelf faster than I picked it up because they all have the same story. Protagonist boy/girl with a deep dark secret in a shady corrupt society, who then meets other protagonist boy/girl with a deeper and darker secret. The details differ, but the formula is exactly that. It's a formula, and I'm freaking sick of it. So, after talking books with some friends, I found that a lot of the titles that I absolutely love are some that people haven't heard of. So today, I've compiled a list from my own personal library to help keep you occupied this summer. The first book I want to recommend is Inkheart. It's a trilogy following a 12-year-old girl named Maggie and her bookbinder father Mo, who has a secret ability. With the power of his voice, he can read things out of books. After receiving a cryptic visit from a midnight visitor, Maggie and Mo must leave their home and go on the run from a faceless villain called Capricorn. And at the heart of it all is a single book, Inkheart. Now, this trilogy is marketed as a young adult series, however, it's pretty dark for kids, and each book only gets darker. Maggie's grown up reading about adventures, and now that she finds herself in a real one, she's starting to think that they're better left on the page. The first book is set in our world, but by the second and third, we actually get to see the world beyond the pages of Inkheart, something we weren't given if you've seen the 2008 movie with Brendan Fraser and Paul Bettany. This is one of my favorite books. I love Cornelia's writing style. I read this series maybe once, twice a year sometimes. It's a real page-turner, and as the reviews say, a real book lover's book. Within the same vein of books about books, there is the City of Dreaming Books. In a word, I'd say it's whimsical, like Tim Burton-ish whimsy, not like it's creepy, but it's eccentric. In this world, books are national treasures and authors are basically celebrities. The main character/narrator is a charming Bilbo Baggins-esque hero named Optimus Yarnspinner, who travels to the famed City of Dreaming Books after the death of his authorial godfather. This is one of the few books that actually made me chuckle out loud as I read it. It's fairly fast-paced and a bit silly at times, but then it can get unexpectedly dark and violent. I picked it up half thinking I was reading a kid's book until the first death happened, and I was shocked. But in a good way, because we love violence here. Anyway, it's a very engaging read. I finished it in about 4-ish days and then immediately started again. If you love classic literature like I do, then you'll recognize a lot of the parodied versions of famous authors and their books, scattered throughout like Easter eggs. This is an ongoing series with 4 books and a 5th final book on the way. The only way I can describe it without giving too much away is Arcane in book form. Not that it's super video gamey, but just the overall steampunk meets magic world, very character-driven narrative where good guys and bad guys are defined by whose perspective you're following at the time. All 4 books take place during a world war perpetrated by the authoritarian Palatine, who are looking to perfect the world. In the form of atheism? From the city of Ilmar to the city on the back of a crab. While there's a different cast each time, one character stays constant. The timid priest of a dead religion and the last follower of God, Yasnik. He's a little cog thrown into the huge machine of war and somehow manages to stay at the center of pivotal events. But he's not the only perspective we're given. We get to see the war through the eyes of the enemy occupiers, resistance factions, criminals, and normal people just trying to keep their heads down and get by. There's a lot of overlap and a lot of really clever payoffs. It feels like you're reading a movie. And when I read it, I'm imagining it's animated in the style of Arcane. The Boss Log trilogy starts off with a book called Perdido Street Station. I passed this one in the bookstore many times until I finally decided to just pick it up and read the first couple of pages. Now it's one of my favorite steampunks. It's another book that has interwoven stories told from multiple perspectives across a sprawling city known as New Crobuzon. Each book in the trilogy, while centered around New Crobuzon, are only loosely connected to each other with a different story and cast for each book. But it all ultimately comes together in a grand narrative about a city in turmoil, marred by politics and resistance groups that each have their own idea of freedom. But that's just the overarching conflict. In the details, there are arcane scientists, eldritch horrors, a pirate city made of ships, even a machine singularity. Boss Log is endlessly fascinating with some truly unique species of fantasy creatures, the insectile Kepri woman, the amphibious Voginoi, the birdmen Garuda, and so much more. The magic is something called thaumaturgy, explained using a lot of clever science and math. Honestly, I don't really understand it, but I feel smart when I read it. Going back in time to the 1950s, there is Gormenghast, a gothic fantasy centered around an ancient civilization built off of strict tradition and ritual. Not like magic rituals, but a long, ridiculous list of obscure routines the royal family of this earldom must follow. The story kicks off with the birth of the future heir of the line of Groan, a boy named Titus. While he is being raised to one day take over Gormenghast, there is a young, ambitious servant from the kitchens named Steerpike, who has infiltrated the royal family with hopes of gaining influence and power. Change is coming to Gormenghast, and the future is uncertain. There isn't really a clear linear progression. It's mostly a bunch of events that happen and trickle down into each other, so I can't really say much without spoiling pretty much everything. It's a slow burn, but the descriptions are incredibly vivid. It reminds me of reading Edgar Allan Poe, who's also really good at poetic description. One interesting fact is that the author also died before he could finish the third book, so his wife tried to fill in the gaps as best as she could. You can definitely tell. It feels like you're reading a first draft manuscript that's still a work in progress, especially compared to the fullness of the other two. But in a way, it works with the story, because by this point, Titus has grown up and has left Gormenghast, so the world beyond his home is strange and unfamiliar, just like the writing style. Next up is Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. Whatever. I'm honestly astounded by how many people I know who have never heard of this book. It's freaking awesome. The main character, unassuming Richard, lives an ordinary and unassuming life until the day he saves a strange girl in the street named Dor. Because of this, he falls into a half-world, which causes him to be forgotten by his old life, as though he never existed. From there, he's thrown into a complicated plot involving politics, assassinations, treachery, and magic in a subterranean world below the streets of London. If you can, I'd recommend getting the illustrated version because it adds so much colorful context to the characters and settings. Not to mention, they're just incredibly well done. I mean, look at this. Look at it. It's beautiful. There's adventure, there's mystery, there's rats. There's so much cool stuff in this novel. Honestly, I wish it would get its own anime or something. I think this would be sick as an animation. If you're a fan of his Dark Materials or the Lockwood & Co. series, then I think you'll love Neverwhere. This one was a pleasant surprise for me. As an Edgar Allan Poe fan, I immediately jumped on this one when I saw the words gothic horror in the synopsis. A doctor from the big city goes to this aristocrat family's manor in the snowy mountains to replace their predecessor, who died suddenly. Turns out, there's a newfound species of parasite running rampant, and the doctor has to find a way to stop it before it spreads. I don't really have much to say about this one, except just read it. It's one of those rare instances of modern fantasy that isn't trying to please an audience with whatever's popular. It's very much its own thing, and I'm super excited to see what else this author will create. Personally, I'm praying there's a sequel, fingers crossed. It was left pretty open-ended, so you never know. In the meantime, from the same author, there is the works of Vermin, which I am in the process of reading, and so far, it is just as good. Now, to round off the list, because my voice is dying, there is Senlin Ascends, the first book in the Books of Babel series, or Babel. Sorry. Now, I can't speak for the entire series, as I'm currently reading and I'm only on book 2. However, what I have read has been nothing short of outstanding. It's one of those reads that goes really fast because you just can't put it down. Thomas Senlin and his new wife, Maria, are visiting the famed Tower of Babel on their honeymoon. But uh-oh, Senlin has lost his wife, which starts him off on a spiraling adventure into the madness that is the tower. Corrupt nobles, sadistic theater, gilded criminals. In the tower, no one is your friend. This is another one of those books where you read it and you can just tell that the author watches movies. I don't know how else to describe it other than that it reads cinematically, and it's another steampunk. I'm detecting a pattern with myself. Guess I'm trying to fill the void left in my soul while I wait for the Lies of P sequel. Anyway, it's a fun and funny read with nail-biting plots and a main character who goes from a dry, put-together school teacher to a criminal on the run and a pirate. What's not to love? So that is my list of books you should read. This is a lot different from what I usually do, but I wanted to try it since I've started putting my voice on the interwebs and all that. Hopefully you got something out of it, and if not, then I don't know what to tell you, man. Anyway, I'm gonna go drink some water now. Bye.